Hey everyone, I'm back, and today we're going to be talking about Star Trek Nemesis, and this is the 10th Star Trek film, and this movie came out in 2002, directed by Stuart Bird, if I pronounced that correctly. Baird. I have no idea how to pronounce that, but this is the first time I've seen this movie, and I've heard that it was not very good, and it was supposedly the final Star Trek film in this ongoing timeline, and I thought it was pretty bad. And honestly, it's probably my least favorite Star Trek film since the fifth movie, The Final Frontier. It just had barely anything that I liked about it. It had good performances. I liked all the cast reprising their roles. And when they were on screen together, the movie worked for me just fine. But aside from that, I just didn't really like anything about this movie. I didn't like the story. It was way too slow for what it was. And the first half of this movie is just nothing happening. Whereas the second half is just a really drawn out action sequence, it felt. Where we have the Enterprise and the main villain of the movie, played by Tom Hardy. They're just fighting it out for like half an hour nonstop. And it's very boring to watch. There's nothing interesting going on visually, and this movie, I feel as though, uses the most CGI out of all the Star Trek films. And just by the way it's shown and the way it's lit, it honestly reminded me of the Star Wars prequels. This is the kind of level we're at here. Whereas the effects in that movie didn't look all that great because they just CG'd the entire backgrounds and there weren't really any sets for the most part. And sure, there are sets in this movie, but the entire time I just felt as though I was looking at a computer for at least a quarter of it. Maybe less, but that's how it felt to me. And none of the characters were particularly interesting. There was no interesting conflict with any of them. The villain of the movie, I just found him to be very weak, and I just wish that there was something else going on. Not that he has nothing. The problem is, where I take issue with it, is the overall general presentation, and it's just not attached to anything that I particularly care about. This movie had no idea how to build up tension or suspense throughout the entire runtime. It was just showing scenes that are, on paper, supposedly very suspenseful, and like we have Captain Picard captured at a certain point in time, and then he's freed within like a few minutes after being captured. And I just thought to myself, you have no idea how to present any of this information for it to be effective. And there are points where the villain kills his own men, and that was kind of odd. It just felt out of place, so like you didn't need to do that. None of it felt complimentary to what it was showing. This is also one of the most boring Star Trek movies out of all of them. Mostly because nothing is happening for the first half of the movie, and the rest of it is just mindless, dumb action that doesn't matter. There was nothing satisfying throughout the entire film. That's also something I was lacking in this film. Like, oh, you earned these emotions, or I really liked this payoff, and you never get any of that. I also kind of hated how this movie kind of opened. Like, our first introduction to Picard was him, like, giving a speech, and you think that, oh, it's something integral to the plot, and he's being given orders, and he's just talking to his crew or whatever, but nope, instead we have like a wedding going on. And all I could think to myself was, we're doing this, really? It was just so cheesy in a way that did not earn any of the emotions that it was showing, which is kind of sad, unfortunately. The action scenes in this movie, I kind of mentioned them briefly that I just wasn't engaged, but one thing that I forgot to mention is that they just kept reminding me of other films that I enjoyed a lot more. Like, there was a scene that took place in a desert, and it was like a car chase, basically. And I was just thinking to myself, I wished I was watching Mad Max, like The Road Warrior, or even Beyond Thunderdome. Like, those movies that came out before this were much more engaging and had a lot more to them. There were points where I wished I was watching Star Wars. Like, this is the first Star Trek movie that made me wish I was watching a Star Wars movie. Even though there's one movie that came out in this franchise that I would consider worse than this movie. However, the reason why I mentioned Star Wars now is because this movie felt a bit more reminiscent to Star Wars in the action scenes than The Final Frontier did, which I don't even remember anything about that movie. It's just so forgettable. Whereas this one, it just feels like a worse version of everything that I've seen before. And that's about all I have to say about Star Trek Nemesis. It wasn't good. It was a unsatisfying film to be the 10th film in this franchise, and supposedly it was supposed to be the last one, which at the time I can see myself being very disappointed if I watched this movie in a theater and saw it for the first time there, and I was like, that's it? This is the end of this franchise? Like, I could see myself being really mad about that. Just having the most unsatisfying conclusion to this franchise. But that didn't happen. Instead, I just watched these movies as standalone films, and I guess I wasn't waiting to watch this movie with 20 years of build-up throughout the entirety of my life. Like, that didn't happen, but it's really just not good. And out of all of the Star Trek movies that I've seen, including the Calvin Timeline films, for those who don't know, those are the ones with Chris Pine as James T. Kirk. And there are 5 movies from this entire franchise that I like. The second movie, the 6th movie, the 8th movie, the 9th film, and Star Trek Beyond, which I believe that's 13? That's the 13th one? So those 5 I would recommend. The rest of them are either okay or bad. The ones I would say are 5 out of 10s for me are the third movie, The Search for Spock, Star Trek Generations, and Star Trek from 2009. Those ones are 5 out of 10s, and the rest of them are 4 lower. That would be my recommendation from this franchise. So you don't have to watch Star Trek Nemesis. There's nothing important about it. You're not missing anything if you don't watch this movie ever. So with all that being said, I'm going to give Star Trek Nemesis a 3 out of 10. Thank you for watching my videos. As always, if you enjoyed this review, be sure to leave a like and comment down below you thought of Star Trek Nemesis, and my social media links. They will all be in the description, so follow me there. And last but not least, subscribe to be a part of Foley Nation, and I'll see you when I get my next review up, and that is going to be for Robin Hood from 2010, directed by Ridley Scott, so look forward to that. But until I get that up, thank you for watching and have a great day.